Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to stick in line with the last couple of videos and talk a little bit more about poetry. Poetry is wisdom that's forgotten far too often. Typically, in this day and age, poems aren't studied as much as they used to be, but there are still truly impactful poets out there. I came across this. This is a blog. It's a discovery blog, and it's called Poems About Life. And in this, it says this is 40 transformative poems about life that everyone should know. And what it is, it's excerpts from 40 different poems. And I'll tell you, if you like the excerpt, then I would suggest you go and you find that author and pick up some writings by them, or at least study them online. But I always like, when it comes to poetry, I like to have a few books that I can read, have in my hand. You can go back and read it again and again. So that would be my suggestion here. I'm going to burn through these pretty quick, but you're going to get the point. There's 40 poems that were mentioned in this blog. I think it's a good suggestion. So let's start. The first one is Risk by Anais Nin, and that name is spelled Anais, and last name is Nin. And this is the excerpt from the poem. It says, "And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." So this is 8 lines out of this poem, Risk, which is talking about the metaphor and understands the poem serves to call action to change now, no matter how scary. So that excerpt, it's not as easy to follow as some of the rest of them, but if you like how that sounds, Anais Nin is who that is. Next is one of my favorite poets. This is Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. And this is that excerpt. "The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." So Frost is pretty great. His stuff is dead on, but it can be taken in different contexts, typically around life decision making and choices. So there you go. That's basically weary of life and its challenges, but it basically says we've all experienced and you keep going. 3 is an excerpt from Emily Dickinson's Hope is the Thing with Feathers. And here's that excerpt. It says, "I've heard it in the chillest land, among the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me." So basically, this is the bird of hope, and that sings the harshest, most adverse times in our lives. Hope is the only thing that gets people through, never asking anything in return. So there you go. That's Emily Dickinson. The 4th is The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. Here's the excerpt here. "I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives without forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free." So Barry admires the power of nature's simplicity, reminding us that we can always turn to the grace of the world to soothe over ever-worrying, overthinking human mind. Part of the human condition is to overthink. There's many sayings around the suffering in our mind is much worse than what we're actually going through on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's a good little excerpt. That's by Wendell Berry. You may want to check him out if you like that verse. The next is A Summer Day by Mary Oliver. And here's the excerpt. It says, "Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me what it is you plan to do with one wild and precious life." So here she is talking about whatever this might mean to each of us. So what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And that's Mary Oliver. The 6th excerpt is from The Guest House by Rumi. Rumi is a great poet. There's tons of stuff around just about anything you'll go through in life and expectations in life. And this excerpt is from The Guest House. "The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." So basically, this is from a 13th century Persian poet. That's who Rumi is, and this is Guest House. This poem serves as a reminder to not resist life's painful thoughts, but to welcome them with warmth and good grace. The expectation here is that either you're winning in situations or you're gaining wisdom from them. That's what Rumi is suggesting in this verse. So that would be a good one to take a look at. Number 7 is From Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, and that last name is spelled Kaur. And here is the excerpt. What is stronger than the human heart, which shatters over and over and still lives? So his poems here, or her poem here, is rather a clarion call. It prioritizes oneself, and it tells you to start living intentionally. And that's what resonates deeply with today's increasingly alienated generation. And here's the thing, every generation feels alienated, and the next, typically, it feels worse than the first. So that is a pattern that all generations have. So it's something worth calling out there. The next is Sonnet 29 by William Shakespeare. And here's the excerpt from that. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, happily I think on thee, and then my state like to the dark at break of day rising, from sullen earth sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, and then I scorn to change my state with kings. This poem reminds us that even in the toughest of times, those who we love have the power to completely change our outlook. Number 9 is I Took My Power in My Hand, and this is by Emily Dickinson. She writes tons of great stuff, or she wrote tons of great stuff. So if you like the excerpt, look into that. I am aimed by pebble, but myself was all the one that fell. Was it Goliath was too large, or was myself too small? This poem is populated with unorthodox punctuation and mid-sentence capitalization to emphasize the confusion and bewilderment in the poet's thoughts as she came to terms with failure. That's Emily Dickinson. The 10th poem is O Me, O Life by Walt Whitman. And here is the excerpt. O me, O life, the questions of these reoccurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of the cities filled with the foolish, of myself forever reproaching myself. For who more foolish than I, and who more faithless? Of eyes that vainly crave the light, the objects mean of the struggle ever renewed. Of the poor results of all, of the plotting and sordid crowds I see around me, of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest me entwined. The question, O me, so sad reoccurring, what good amidst these, O me, O life? So here in Whitman's case, this literary verse, it's metaphorically referring to whatever you bring to the table. And basically that's an endless challenge. So Walt Whitman is an American poet that was very popular at the turn of not the last century, but the one before. So here we are. Number 11 is Life Doesn't Frighten Me by Maya Angelou. And if you don't know who Maya Angelou is, she's was fantastic. Her writings are incredible. Did a lot with suffrage and a lot with equal rights and the pain caused by those things when they're lacking. So this is called Life Doesn't Frighten Me. Shadows on the wall, noises down the hall. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Bad dogs barking loud, big ghost in a cloud. Life doesn't frighten me at all. So whether the child is truly afraid or not, this poem perfectly encapsulates the concept of facing your fears with a smile. Because in the end, fearing something, that goes back to that quote that fear isn't real. What you do in response to it is. So it's not the situation, but how you handle it. That's a great poem. The 12th excerpt is A Psalm Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow find us further than today. So while both of these emotions are part of the journey, the purpose of life of us is to act, to improve oneself, and to make each day better than the previous one. So that's Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. That was the 12th excerpt. The 13th is Do Not Go Into That Gentle Good Night by Dylan Thomas. This is a poem that's extremely well quoted and quoted often. And here is the excerpt. And you, my father, there on the sad height, course bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the day. This came from a 19-line poem that was, it's well studied and it's quoted by militaries across the world, and there's a lot of military books if you read those. It's written as a dedication to his late father. The poem feels deeply personal and vulnerable. not just as a poet's advice to the world, but a son's advice to his father. That's the 13th one. The 14th is Desiderata, spelled Desiderata, by Max Ehrmann, last name Ehrmann. Go placidly amidst the noise and haze to remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and to the ignorant. They too have their story. It's a pretty good call out. This is the productive nature of Ehrmann's advice to his daughter has resonated with millions, resulting in the poem being regarded as a manual to a life well lived. So that's Max Ehrmann. The 15th excerpt is from Leisure by W.H. Davies, and this is that excerpt. What is this life? If, full of care, we have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows. So this is talking about leisure. If you think you've been overdoing it at work, leisure is just a reminder that you need to take a step back and stare. The 16th excerpt is from Opportunity by Burton Bradley. And here's what that says. Without dumb and dismay, you are smitten. You think there's no chance for you, son. Why the best books haven't been written. Why the best race hasn't been run. The best score hasn't yet been made. The best song hasn't been sung. The best tune hasn't been played yet. Cheer up, for the world is very young. Or for the world is young. To write the best books, to sing the best songs, etc., it reiterates the opportunities in life are plentiful. And there's enough for everyone to do. We don't have to be in such strict competition that we can't celebrate the successes of others. But it says, the best things have not been done. I like that. That's a good poem. That's Opportunity by Burton Bradley. The next is The Builders, and this is another one by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This is the 17th excerpt, and here's what it says. All the architects are fate, working in these walls of time. Some with massive deeds and great, and some with ornaments of rhyme. So this is basically talking about massive deeds or ornaments of rhyme. Each and every person has a role to play, and we should all play them. The 18th excerpt is Life by Charlotte Bronte, and here's what that says. Sometimes there are clouds of gloom, but these are transient all. If the shower will make the roses bloom, oh, why lament its fall? So it's talking about the rain. Why lament it? Clearly, eventually everything's going to clear up and be replaced by something pleasant. So why dread the rain, or why dread the tough times in life? Good poem. That's by Charlotte Bronte. 19th excerpt is Full Life by D.H. Lawrence, and this is what that says. A man can't fully live unless he dies and ceases to care. So there you go. The paradoxical nature of the poem's very existence often leaves readers wondering what the poet really means. I think it's reflected in the poem's length. Everything comes to an end. 20th excerpt is What is This Life by Sir Walter Raleigh. And this is what it says. What is our life? The play of passion, our mirth, the music of division, our mother's wombs we're trying houses be, where we are dressed for life's short comedy. Basically, here it's predictable nature. It talks about the repeating couple highlights of life that come in the death. The poem serves a matter-of-fact reminder of life's meaninglessness, its short span, and therefore it can't be taken too seriously, or it should not be taken too seriously. So that's Sir Walter Raleigh. That's the 20th excerpt. The 21st is Each Life Converges to Some Center, and this is by Emily Dickinson. Each life converges to some center, expressed or still. Exists in every human nature a goal. Basically, this is viewed as a complex philosophical poem that will leave people questioning life. The idea is we mostly focus on goals. The 22nd excerpt is from Stream of Life by Rabindranath Tagore, last name Tagore, and this is the excerpt. The same stream of life that runs through my veins, night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust and earth, numbers blades of grass, and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. That's from Tagore, and this basically is a poem that leaves us with an innate sense of belonging to the world that we live in, basically seeing it through this lens. The next is the 23rd excerpt is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, and this is that excerpt. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may try me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. She is a very empowering writer, and I think that anyone can get some strength through what she's written. It says, life might pin you down and write you off. All you have to do is stand up, rise. 24th is Life is a Privilege by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And here's the excerpt. Life is a privilege, its youthful days shine with the radiance of continuous maze. To live, to breathe, to wonder and desire, to feed with dreams the heart's perpetual fire. Basically, it's saying it serves as a bittersweet reminder of how short life is. The poem encourages the reader to have no room for regret and live out their heart's desires. The 25th poem is Lines on a Skull, and this is by Ravi Shankar, last name spelled Shankar. And here's the excerpt. Life's little are heads, sad, redeem and wasting clay. This chance be of use. So here the poet urges us to use our heads to make our lives useful, which seems like sound advice. The 26th poem is The Room of My Life by Anne Sexton. Here, in the room of my life, the objects keep changing. Ashtrays to cry into, the suffering brother of the wood walls. The 48 keys of the typewriter, each an eyeball that is never shut. So basically, these objects highlight Sexton's pain and despair, showing a life from a different perspective, which here is hers. The 27th poem is A Question by Robert Frost, and here's the excerpt. A voice said, look me in the stars, and tell me truly, men of earth, if all the soul and body scars were not too much to pay for birth. Robert Frost is to the point, he's one of my favorites. The true to the nature of the title, Frost ends the poem with the question itself, perhaps reflecting the inability to arrive at an answer, if there is a definite answer at all. So that's the 27th. The 28th is Life by Sarojini Naidu, last name spelled Naidu, and here's the excerpt. Till ye have battled with great grief and fears, and borne the conflict of dream-shattering years, wounded with the fierce desire, and worn with strife, children, ye have not lived, for this is life. That is a powerful, powerful excerpt from that poem. It basically says, dream-shattering years. As you get older, you realize things, and this poem calls that out. It states that children haven't yet experienced the harsh realities of life, and unfortunately, no matter how much you protect them, they will. They will. When you reach an age of majority and you reach adulthood, we all get taught the same lessons. That's what's strong about poetry, and that's what's strong specifically about wisdom and why you want to read books and poems, because you learn from other people's lives. You learn from their experiences, and you learn from what they went through. That way, when you're going through it, maybe the suggestion is that you view it a little more positively, because in the end, that's where experience comes from, okay? Here's the 29th poem suggested. It's Each Moment is Precious by Pat A. Fleming. And the person you're with in that moment you share, give them all of your focus and be totally there. Pretty strong little suggestion. Each moment is precious. Live directly in that moment. What a great poem there. That is by Fleming, Fleming. Great suggestion. The 30th poem is My Inner Life by Robert William Service. And here's how that goes. For I've a hidden life no one can ever hope to see. A sacred sanctuary for none may share with me. It's called My Inner Life. This poem is reassuringly encourages us to be true to ourselves, regardless of what others may think. And here's the point. I talk about living in the moment all the time, being true to yourself. You have one short life. You get to live your life the way you see fit or the way others would have you do it. One is fulfilling, the other is not, okay? 31st poem is Life is Fine, and this is by Langston Hughes. So, since I'm still here living, I guess I will live on. I could have died for love, but for living I was born. There you go. The honest, vulnerable tone of the poem resonates with many, encourages us to keep going even when we feel like giving up. So that poem was Life is Fine. Here is the 32nd poem. It's Futility by Wilfred Owen. And here's the excerpt. Was it for the clay grew tall, or made futurist sunbeams toil to break earth's sleep at all? This duality leaves the reader in two moods, savoring life, but also questioning its meaning at the same time. That's by Wilfred Owen, Futility. The 33rd poem is Suppose by E. E. Cummings, and this is the excerpt. Life is an old man carrying flowers in his head. Young Death sits in a cafe smiling, a piece of money held between his thumb and first finger. Interesting expert. Cumming brings the fact that death will inevitably take everything from life, but striking use of metaphor evokes us an urge not to waste hours in the first place. So, as you're selecting poets to read, I would select buying a collection of poems, because you get this. You get to go through all these different authors, these different poets with different backgrounds and beliefs. And so you may find one that resonates with you more. And then through time, some may come up as your favorites through time as you get older as well and live through some things also. So here's the 34th poem for review. It's Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. And this is the excerpt. It says, Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves have never known. The weariness, the fever, the fret, here where young men sit and hear each other groan. And that's the Ode to a Nightingale. And so it says here that the speaker later admits that while death would end his suffering, he would then be unable to enjoy the beauty of a nightingale's song. So the poem urges both for and against human consciousness with no final stance of the matter. The next is Rudyard Kipling's If. I did a video on that previously. It's one of my favorite poems, and it is so strong. All young men, with a father or not, should read and memorize that poem, because it talks about the experiences of life and the benefits of being stoic. He's obviously one of my favorite poets. So here is If. If you keep your head when all about you, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. It's widely considered Kipling's advice to his own son. It's a guide to living an ideal, worthwhile life. So take a look at this poem. I would suggest that greatly. I think it's a fantastic poem, especially for all young men. That's If by Rudyard Kipling. And the 36th is Dockery and Son by Philip Larkin. And here's the excerpt. Unhindered moon, to have no son, no wife, no house or land still seemed quite natural. Only numbness registered the shock of finding out how much of life had gone of life. So this is talking about emphasizing the emptiness and regret he feels when he realizes how much he had and how much is gone. The poem brings out the classic lesson that time shall pass and waits for no one. The 37th poem on this 40-poem list is My Mind to Me a Kingdom Is by Sir Edward Dyer. My mind to me a kingdom is, such present joys therein I find, that it excels all other bliss that earth affords or grows by kind. So Sir Edward Dyer, so for those that don't know, Sir means that this person was knighted somewhere. In the 1900s and late 1800s and even the 1700s, many philosophers and poets were knighted because they thought the kingdoms thought they were a national treasure. That's why that would happen, and that's where the Sir comes from. And so in this poem, rather than constantly seeking pleasure elsewhere like several others, he reveals a refreshing sense of being content in possession, his most powerful tool, a peaceful mind. So that's a great read, Sir Edward Dyer. The 38th poem is A Quo Boine Dyer by Charlotte Mew, spelled M-E-W, and here's the excerpt. And one fine morning in a sunny lane, some boy and girl will meet and kiss and swear that nobody can love their way again, while over there you will have smiled, I shall have tossed your hair. This is a sentiment that basically a lot of young folks feel at some point in their lives. Though lovers be lost, love shall not, and death shall have no dominion, is the quote that comes from a Welsh poet named Dylan Thomas, which is basically what Mew's talking about there, the power of young love. The 39th poem is My Heart Leaps Up by William Wadsworth, and here's the excerpt. My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So was it when my life began, and so it is now I am a man. So be it when I shall grow old, or let me die. The poem argues that adults should not let this childlike sense of awe or appreciation for nature die out, and it's what makes life worth living. And I would agree with that 100%. And the 40th poem is by Mother Teresa, and it is life is. If you don't know who Mother Teresa is, look her up. She lived in the last century and was fantastic. And here is the poem. Life is an opportunity, benefit from it. Life is beauty, admire it. Life is a dream, realize it. Life is a challenge, meet it. So basically, the poem's positive, inspiring tone promises to leave you in high spirits. The idea is that you make the most of every single day. Do your best to impact the world around you to the best of your ability. So that's 40 different poems by, I think, 36-ish or so authors. Definitely, if you're not into poetry, get into it. Buy some collectives. You can find them at Goodwill. You can find them at bookstores for cheap. Go through that, find the poets that you like, and start reading some of their work. This kind of stuff does impact your wisdom and your understanding by learning what people have gone through outside of your lifetime, right? You're learning from their experiences. You're learning from what they've done. And I would suggest that for everyone. Thank you for sticking through the video. I know it's a bunch of random stuff and just basically a talking head on there, but I would rather read these things out like that so you have the impact of what's there, especially if you're listening to this and not necessarily watching it on a screen somewhere. So please like and subscribe if you like stuff like this. Some of those poems I will review one by one on their own video as well, the ones that I find the most impactful. Please subscribe. I'm Ben. Be good.